Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and on the night of the match, I'm joined by Colin Watt and Laura Bradburn to talk about the upcoming fixture with Aberdeen. We're 30 minutes away from kick-off, ladies and gents, and we're aware of the lineup. It's been released over the last hour or so. And I was just saying before we came on, it's as if Neil Lennon obviously tunes into ACSOM because it's the team that we were more or less calling for. Colin, what's your thoughts? A few changes, obviously. Welsh in for Duffy, Sorrell in for Brown, and Ayeti in for Rogic.
Yeah, it's pretty much the team we suggested earlier on today. The only exception was that I'd suggested Mikey Johnson to be in there, but I don't even see him on the bench, so I wonder what's going on there. I'm not sure if he's injured or whatnot. Maybe someone in the comments could let us know. But it's good to see he's going back to two up front. I really prefer us when we play two up front. I think when we played the 3-5-2, it didn't work defensively for us. We kind of went with this diamond formation, and it has been working. We have to give the chance for Eddie and Ayeti to put a partnership together up front. And when you're playing at home, you should be on the front foot. You're wanting the two up front to hold the ball up, to link up with the midfield. I'm looking forward to this one tonight.
I'm looking forward to it as well, Colin. I do know, I remember you did mention Mikey Johnson. It's been a real stop-start season and a half for, can we still call him a youngster? He is a youngster in the realms of the Celtic team, I guess. It's disappointing to see him drop off the bench, but we do have Anthony Ralston on there, so that might pick you up a wee bit. What's your thoughts on the lineup, Laura? It seems very positive to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have been saying, I am very pleased to see Sorrell back in there. I think Scott Brown, as expected, has played an awful lot of minutes in the last week, 10 days, and that was always going to catch up with him. So I think from that point of view, it kind of keeps both camps happy in terms of Sorrell getting his opportunity and the bigger fans of Scott Brown being able to see that he's still playing his part in things. Agree with Colin about going two up front. I think much prefer the way we've played when we've had two up front in the last few weeks, and I think we suffered for not having that in the last game. So yeah, I'm much more looking forward to it tonight than I was against St Johnstone, just because of the lineup primarily, and obviously the fact that Aberdeen aren't doing too well. So hopefully we can put in a good performance and maybe bag a few goals.
I would hope so as well. I mean, I was looking at the performances of Aberdeen since the turn of the year, played 9, won 1. So 4 draws and 4 defeats. I mean, that is poor. And I heard Neil Lennon coming out and defending Derek McInnes earlier today, talking about how well he had done as the Aberdeen gaffer. But you wouldn't expect any less from Neil Lennon after the kind of criticism he's come in for this season as well, Colin. I mean, how do you see it going tonight? I mean, I keep looking at the points difference, the goals deficit. I mean, we could cut the gap, which this sounds absolutely dreadful. We could cut the gap to 15 points tonight, but we need to also, take advantage of any opportunities where we could claw back some goals as well, because I think it's sitting at 20 the goal difference, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. And I'm just looking at the Aberdeen lineup here. Quite an attacking lineup if you look at it. They've got Hornby and Canberry up front. They see Kennedy just playing off them. Strong midfield with Ferguson in there. And Considine, Hayes at the back. They're going to come out and have a go here. And they could be a threat at set pieces tonight when you look at who's playing at the back with Andy Considine and the boy Hoban there as well. So we've got to be careful for that. They've got some good players that can hit set pieces like Ferguson, like McCrory. So this could be a real end-to-end game tonight. I think they're still struggling to find form. You've got a partnership up there, a Hornby and Canberry, that have never played together. I think this is Canberry's first game for Aberdeen. So you've got to try and get a goal early, just like we did the last time we played at home, and see where it takes us from there. But I think this could be really close and really end-to-end tonight. An exciting one for the neutrals that can't watch it.
The neutrals, talking of neutrals, there are fans of other clubs littering the chat rooms from time to time. Colin, now, the thing is, we do have some Hibs, Dundee United fans who come in. Everything's reasonable. There's no nonsense or abuse, therefore we can engage with them. But McGrory comes in via YouTube. Welcome to the show, McGrory. At least we have a sniper to sort the live chat being ruined. We do try. It's not always easy. Colin, we've said that before. I mean, you're talking like literally sometimes over 1,000 comments come through over the 3 different social media channels, and they all get filtered into the one screen, and it can often be difficult to keep up with that. We know that Celtic are playing this evening and Rangers aren't, so what you'll probably find is quite a lot of their fans getting involved in a Celtic podcast, which I still can't get my head round, but we will combat that as much as we possibly can throughout the show. Now, another comment coming in from Sneds, 1967 Gaming Benchmarks. It's a great name and an even better avatar. That's the team I want to see start. Well done, Lenny, for a change. Come on the hoops, Welsh and Sorrow. Thank God, no Duffer in the starting lineup. The thing with Duffy is I was pretty critical of him at the weekend, wasn't I, against St Johnstone, Colin? But
Yep.
you know, the flip side of that is I just feel that Welsh has done enough to be given a longer run in the team. I want to see him develop in a partnership, even though we might expect Ayer to move on in the summer. I would love to see him staying. Of all the players that there's been speculation around, I would love to see Ayer staying there. And I think he would be brilliant for Welsh. Now, what I did see against St Johnstone is he did try a few of these long range, sorry, not against St Johnstone, in his last game, he tried a few long range passes. They didn't come off. This was a game against St Mirren, wasn't it? They didn't come off, but I think he's bringing that into his game, because we have heard, obviously, from youth coaches that is part of his game, Colin. How much are you looking forward to seeing him return to the defence tonight?
Oh, definitely. We were saying on the bulletin earlier on, if he was fit, get him in. And that's exactly what's happened. We see him starting tonight. I remember when he was on loan last season at Morton. My pals that go to the Morton games were telling me that he was playing primarily in the right back position. So he's obviously got to have a bit about him, pace-wise, to go up and down the park. And his passing range will all come into that as well. Look, at the end of the day, you just want your defenders to defend and give it to the guys that can play football. But if he can put a passing range in that helps him kind of break through a stubborn defence, then that's even better. But like, clean sheet is the first thing. Get the clean sheet and then build on it from there.
You know, when we're looking at that defence, and thanks for Sean Ross coming in, hail, 3-1 to Celtic. Let's hope so, Sean. We're looking at the defence as a whole, Laura. I've said a few times it seems pretty obvious, but I do feel that Kenny, he deals with the defensive areas of his game first and foremost, and he does give us that balance, doesn't he? It looks as though Taylor's going to be given and rewarded for his patience a long run in the team, and I just think, you know, although Kenny hasn't done anything spectacular, he's shown enough and he's given us enough balance. Is this someone that you would maybe try to bring back, very much like El Yunusi, bring him back for a longer period, maybe next season, or would you be looking for a permanent right back in the summer?
I think the most positive thing I can say about Kenny is that, like you say, he kind of slotted straight in and you were never particularly worried in the performances that you saw that he was a standout weak link, if you like. And at that point, given how little time we had to sort something out after Frimpong left and El Hamid went, you can't ask really any more than that, other than for there to be a solid player of some description in there. Like you say, I don't think he's spectacular in any way, but I don't think that's what we needed. I would be quite happy for him to stay for a longer period of time, particularly considering I've not heard anything on the horizon about anybody else that we're looking at in that position. But I would hope that in the longer term, either there's potential for him to improve a lot, or we are looking for somebody of a higher caliber. But certainly for now, he's doing more than enough to merit his place.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you see a lot of the kind of concerns around the loan players. You know, the concerns are we're putting minutes in the legs of other teams' players with no option to buy, Colin. And you know, you think, looking at Kenny, thinking, yeah, he could be a good addition. you wouldn't go to 7 or 8 million quid, which seems to be the amounts they're talking about in terms of a transfer. I certainly wouldn't go to that kind of level, especially when you're looking at some of the departures or the possible departures and the money that will be coming in. But he has given us a bit of balance. I'm looking forward to seeing him tonight again at Celtic Park. Are we able with the fullbacks to build a relationship with the players in front of them as well? Because we were kind of hoping that like Salt and El Yunusi might have done something down the left, but that's not come to fruition. Do you think Taylor and Kenny can also do that as an attacking force?
I would say so. And part of the thing that you were just mentioning there about developing other teams' players, when you look at it, Kenny is probably the only right back we've got there. I know Ralston's sitting on the bench, but we know Ralston's not going to be there next season. So it's not as if you can give Ralston the games to help him develop, because he's going to be moving on as well. With Welsh, that's why he's in ahead of Duffy, because you know Welsh is going to be there next season. You want to develop your own player instead of playing someone who you know you're not going to have next season. That's why you want Welsh in the side. But yeah, definitely what I've seen from Kenny so far has been it's been an improvement on what we've seen so far this season. One of the big kind of improvement points that we were looking for from Frimpong was his final ball. Now, so far, the kind of stuff that we've seen from Kenny so far has been impressive. He's not really had, I don't think he's had an assist or that yet, but the balls that's been coming in, there's been a couple where you've just been like, you need someone in that position to put them away. And Greg Taylor, his consistency over the last few games has been brilliant. Whether it's been sort of 6 or 7s out of 10, it's been consistent, and it hasn't let that level drop. And when you saw it, he won the penalty the other night. He's getting into these positions. He's building up a partnership with the players in front of him. So it's good to see him developing like that. And again, like Salt's going to go back to AC Milan. You're probably not going to get him again in the summer. Let's continue to develop the player we have here, so that when you look at the squad again in the summer, you say, well, this guy's had another 20, 30 games under his belt. Where would he fit in? Do we need to replace that position? Or is it something that we can trust him going forward now that we've seen him when we've been at our lowest? This is how he was able to play. Let's see when we're starting kind of performing to the levels that we know we can.
Listen, before I go back to Laura, I've just been watching Ryan Christie's showreel on Celtic TV, Colin, and I know that he is amongst your favourites in relation to Celtic. You've been pretty vocal about your criticisms of Christie, but you can't deny that in the last game against St Johnstone, he was a game changer, wasn't he?
He was, and he kind of done it the same when he came off the bench against St Mirren as well. Look, consistency is a big word across Scottish football at the minute, and Ryan Christie hasn't shown that. I'm just kind of looking at Celtic TV as well. I didn't realise that your good friend Tosh McKinley was part of the Peaky Blinders cast, and I think Gordon Strachan's not had a shave in a wee while. But no, Ryan Christie, look, there's definitely a player in there, but again, I think he'll be one that moves on in the summer. He's not exactly been shy about the fact that bids have been in for him. People that we've spoken to, we know that he's trying to make his move on in the summer. He tried to make his move on last summer. Look, if the guy thinks he's better than Celtic, that's fine. Look, I don't think he's going to get to the level that he thinks he's as good as. I think he's probably a top half of the Championship, maybe lower half Premiership player. But we spoke about this the other day. If you bring in a new manager, could he get even more out of him, and he could stay a bit longer to develop into the player he could be?
I think it's a bit unfair of you to speak about Tosh in such terms. It's unfair because, if it hadn't been for the lockdown, we probably would have had a new series of Peaky Blinders. I'm desperate to see it. I was obsessed with that.
Is it not? Is it not filming?
I've seen a few things on their Instagram. Aye, so here's hoping. Here's hoping. Laura, Ryan Christie, I just felt that he does show these moments where, like Colin says there, he definitely could make that step up. And what I mean, I don't mean a step up from Celtic. I mean a step up in level in terms of the league that he's playing in. He'll be looking down south. He'll be looking at the players that he's played alongside, such as Stuart Armstrong, for example. And, Armstrong, let's not be revisionist here. He wasn't a star performer every single week. He wasn't getting 9 and 10s out of 10 every week. I think Christie could do well down south. I really do. I do feel as though he still has development. I still think that, he shoots far too much on sight, and that highlights, because often these balls are landing all over the stand, that highlights the bad elements of his game. But I mean, when you look at that showreel, Colin, that I was just looking at there on Celtic TV, the goals that he scores, I mean, Ryan Christie, and I think Jim Orr makes a point, if it hadn't been for him, would we have won the Scottish Cup this year? You look at the Aberdeen performance, you look at the Hearts performance, the goals were astonishing. He has got that special talent, Laura. I actually think that, I've spoken about players coming to the end of their Celtic cycle. I don't think Frimpong was there. I don't think Tierney was there. But other players like, Moussa Dembele, I think we were all of the opinion that, it's time for him to go. He knows it's time. I'd love to see him develop a partnership at that point with Edouard, but, the money's there, he's going to go. I did feel that Tierney and Frimpong were leaving a wee bit early. They probably could have stayed for another season or two. But I still feel the same about Ajer and Christie, I am resigned to the fact that Edouard's on his way in the summer. But I think that Ajer certainly could develop. And I think Christie, like Colin says, under a different coach, under a different structure, we could see the Christie that we saw on a consistent basis under Rodgers.
Yeah, I would say so. I think if you look at the way that he has performed, he just needs to be a bit more consistent, probably. I think that's his main issue. I think that's what marks out most good players, is that they perform consistently at a higher level. I think Christie certainly has the talent. He's done everything that you would expect him to do, and very often comes up in the big moments with big sort of moments in games like the Scottish Cup final. You just wish he would do it on a more consistent basis.
The thing is about Christie, sorry Paul, the thing about Christie is he's now 6 years into his Celtic career. He turns 26 next week. So his time for development is going to run out eventually. He should be towards the prime of his career. And if you're looking to be the kind of player that Stuart Armstrong is for Southampton, or to get to even anywhere near that level, he's still a good bit away from that. He's shown he can do it in glimpses. As you said, the 2 games in the Scottish Cup this season, he was probably the best player in that team. But then when we saw that sort of period round about October, November time, you couldn't get a ball past the first man. The set pieces were dreadful. And his shooting, he would have been as well trying to aim for the post at the rugby game, because he was getting them through there, no bother. The shots were so inconsistent. They were just, I don't know, right? But someone says to me the other day, but Turnbull takes as many shots as Christie. He does. But the thing about Turnbull's shots is they're accurate and they're on target. Ryan Christie could hit somebody in the turnstile bar with one of them shots at times. It's just, if there's a player there, he needs to come out really soon, because he turns 26 next week. You can't keep saying at 26, 27, 28, he's a developing player and you'll see the best of him, because by the time you see the best of him, it comes towards the end of his career.
Yeah, I think when I'm talking about the development side of it, Colin, and by the way, there's no way you drinking the turnstiles, but when you're talking about the development side, what I mean by that really is, I don't mean in terms of developing like a young player, developing into a first team player, but when you get that impact of a manager coming in, and the impact that Brendan Rodgers even had on the likes of James Forrest and Scott Brown, who were, there were no spring chickens at that time. They'd been in and around the Celtic team for a number of years. I do think that his bad spell this season, a part of that, one of the reasons for that was, as a team, we weren't playing well, Colin. The confidence was low during that period as well. And we have had that back and forth, you and I, throughout the season in relation to Christian. I do rate him highly, but not to the point where I don't see his deficiencies. It can be very frustrating at times. It can often be all about Ryan at times. But, to actually counter that, I mean, the tenacity that he shows when he loses the ball, for example, his work rate's phenomenal. I think there was a lot of the period of time where we were seeing poor set pieces. It was due to the fact there was no one else really on the park that was taking them. We didn't have Turnbull, we didn't have Griffiths playing regularly at that time. Thankfully, Turnbull has come in. the maestro that he is, Laura. Turnbull has come in and he's taken corners from both sides, and he does chance his mitt quite a bit. But sometimes, again, no, Colin, I guess in defence of Turnbull and Christie taking so many shots, we get to that point we run out of ideas, and sometimes that's all there is for us to do. Is we're not stretched in the back line, we're not breaching the defensive areas, so we try the long range efforts. Now, remember, going back to Brendan Rodgers, and it seems as though I've mentioned him quite a few times tonight, you think of some of the players that he had who did score from distance, players like Stuart Armstrong. The aforementioned Stuart Armstrong scored a lot of goals from distance. Dembele liked to strike from distance. And I think the players that we have now maybe not be as accurate as those two, Colin, but it's almost a frustration. We can't break them down, so let's try a shot. And from that, it might create a chance. Laura, what's your take on, Turnbull? I mean, this season, obviously, you've been hugely impressed. You've even gone as far to compare him with Celtic legends of the past. I'm looking at the likes of Ryan Christie. We've mentioned Stuart Armstrong. Christie's done it for club and country. I mean, you would hope that Turnbull can make that step up as well in the not too distant future. Has he got one eye on the finals under Steve Clarke, do you think?
I would say so. I think he's done enough to probably merit a place there. I think he certainly could be a team around which the national and his club side could be built. He just seems to be able to slot in wherever's required, and like you say, I've been highly praising of him because I think he's just got that touch of quality that we need. I think he probably has a bit of work to do in terms of, again, the same as Christie, being a slightly bit more consistent. But I don't think he's getting a chance to do that just now because he's getting taken off as often as he is. I would like to see him get more of a chance to have full 90-minute games, get his fitness fully up, and really shows what he's made of. But yeah, I've been really impressed with him so far.
I can't stop going back to the Celtic TV footage because he re-stracking with that beard and Tosh McKinley with the flat cap. Is that Connie McLaughlin that's presenting it as well? So yeah, it's they're now speaking to Neil Lennon. Obviously we can't hear what he's saying, but when I think back to Tosh McKinley, I remember him coming to Celtic Park, and I remember I always regard this as my finest moment as a Celtic fan, my favourite game, and people are surprised at this, but it was when we beat Airdrie in the 1995, sporting that top that you've got on at the moment, actually, Laura. That was the first time we ever wore that top. It was in the 1995 Scottish Cup final, and that pass from Tosh McKinley to Pierre Van Hooydonk's head in the 9th minute. And the reason I always pick it as the most important game is that was basically, that was the floodgates opening in my mind back then. That was the first trophy in 6 years. The first trophy under Tommy Burns, the first trophy under Fergus McCann, and I always have really fond memories of Tosh McKinley. I think he was a victim of a training ground bust-up. Obviously, he stuck the head in Henrik Larsson. And Henrik Larsson is popping up. He's popping up on some of the messages here. So let's bring this up. This is coming in from WWG1WGA. So thanks for these tongue twisters of names. And seeing Henrik Larsson was in the Barcelona dugout last night. I remember, again, beginning of the season, Colin, we were talking, you were suggesting that we should keep Craig Gordon, and you spoke about that and the reasons for keeping him and the fact that he could maybe have a role to play behind the scenes, etc. And I made the suggestion that due to the fact that, Neil Lennon was operating with a team, and I mean a coaching team, that he didn't assemble himself, it would have been a good idea maybe to bring in a striker. So it could be a striker coach, but it could also be a confidant, if you like, to Neil Lennon, one of his former teammates. And I suggested Larsson. And a lot of people were saying, well, it's jobs for the boys. We should be bringing in the best coach. It doesn't matter if they've got an association with Celtic. But I liked the idea of having Henrik Larsson there. I really did. Obviously, we didn't act on that, and he's now at Barcelona. Do you think, again, going back to one of the subjects earlier on today, do you think that the coaching staff might be bolstered rather than depleted in the summer, Colin?
I wouldn't be surprised, no. And just on the point on Henrik Larsson, I was listening to a podcast on Spanish football. I can't even remember who was talking about it, but they were saying that Martin Braithwaite, who's the Barcelona forward, was out in complete praise of Henrik Larsson and how much that he'd helped him develop his career. helped him settle into the club. And I think he'd scored a couple of goals at that point in the season. I think he's since injured and he's not been playing. But it just shows having a good striking coach there can get the best out of players. I know Big John Hartson was at Livingston for a while under David Hopkin, and he was developing their forwards. It's definitely something we should be looking to do. Look, a striker like Henrik or a striker like John Hartson, they know how the game's played, and it's not really changed a lot since they were playing. You get the ball and you stick it in the back of the net, and you find the best way to do it. If they can coach that into some of the young players there, and they can be half as good as what those players are, then you'd have a really good player. So it would be a really good idea to try and bring players like that through. I think it only really works in the striking department as well. I'm not quite sure how a defending coach or a midfield coach would be being a former player, but I really think a striker, it's all about the mind game of being a striker, being in the right position at the right time, making the right choices, and that's something that you struggle to teach.
You look at the current setup at Celtic, and I know that we don't have a defensive coach. A lot of people used to ask, what's the defensive coach doing? We keep losing goals from set pieces. But you do have a coach with the experience of playing in defence in John Kennedy. You've got Neil Lennon if you want to look at the midfield area. And I just feel that is a position. You've got Stevie Woods, of course, who's done so well with the goalkeepers over the years, Colin. And I just felt that was a position that we did lack that bit of guidance. Not just for the first team, but we haven't produced a striker in many, many years. A prolific striker. And I know that some people throw back that argument and say, well, Mark Burchell or Sean Maloney. But, by the time Maloney became a first-team regular, he was no longer an out-and-out striker, although over the piece he scored a few goals. Mark Burchell came in with a flurry of goals, but then kind of faded and his Celtic career tapered off. And I think when we look back on the kind of record books, Colin, you're probably going back to Jerry Craney in the early 90s, and prior to him, Charlie Nicholas in the early 80s, and we haven't really produced that goal-scoring striker. And that was the whole kind of process of us talking about a striking coach. I think when you're looking at the strikers we have, 4 really on the books, and I know we've spoken about Bayo and various others over the last few days. When you're looking at the front 2 there, Laura, Ajeti and Eddie, are you ready to write off Ajeti as a £5 million flop, or do you think he will be a good acquisition given time?
No, I think he's probably he's got a point to prove, certainly, but I think he's definitely got the capabilities to prove it. I think everybody's got slightly short memories in terms of forgetting just how much of an impact he had when he came in at first. He scored quite a number of goals and really looked the part. I was very excited about him. Thought he was kind of probably the best striker we've had since Gary Hooper. So in terms of just being an absolute goal machine, Lee Griffiths aside, obviously, but his issues are well known. So I think it's too early to write him off just now. I think you can't underestimate the current global situation and how much that might have affected him. And I would hate to think that we sort of write him off far too early when we've actually got a good striker on our hands that could prove himself to be of use to us going forward, especially if in the summer we end up losing somebody like Eddie, somebody of Eddie's class, as looks is going to be the case.
It does look likely, Laura. Mark Clements comes in to say decent lineup, still no Barkas though, give him a run. Not like there's much to lose, Turnbull to play 90 minutes this time. Now, the point that Laura made, Colin, on Ajeti, you could make a similar point on Barkas. Comes in, big transfer fee. He's obviously not integrating off the park the way he normally would had we not been in this pandemic situation. So, Barkas, again, is that someone that you would be looking to write off? Would you be looking to try and get him a move back to Greece maybe in the summer? Or do you think that given time, he might be the number one for Celtic?
No, I would keep him. I would give him another pre-season. There's enough footage of him out there showing what he can actually do. And I think there was an award given out just in January there for each country does the best player of their country. And he came second for the goalkeeper. So there's got to be a player there. And as you say, give him a bit more time to integrate. Let's see what he's got with another pre-season under him. Give him the start of the season. And if it's not working, then you've got the rest of the window to bring someone in. I would still hope that there's somewhere a good player in there.
Right, now the players are on the park. They've done their huddle. We're just about to kick off. We will be back at half-time with Laura Bradburn and Colin Watt. So all that's left for me to say is thanks everybody for getting involved, and we'll see you at half-time.